Jones, and welcome to Chewing the Cud, Season 1, Episode 2, and with me as usual is our co-host,
Neil Greggor.
And today we have, our guest is Andrew Clune, who's an Agronomy Manager from BASF. Now, most of you know this is more of a dairy-orientated podcast, but Andrew, well, you like to be involved in the dairy show side of things, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you guys. It's good to be here. Yes, I do a little bit of agricultural commentary at shows and equine events and various bits and pieces through the summer, yeah.
And given that we're basically in show season, and when this goes out in August, it'll be Showtime for Gillingham and Shaftesbury Show, the local show, I thought it just tied in nicely.
Absolutely brilliant.
So when does show season start for you, really?
So I start normally it'll be the long weekend in May at the North Somerset Show, and then I go through to dairy shows, generally the latest one. I've done a few other bits and pieces when shows have come up, like the Southwest Game Fair and those sort of things over the years, but they're not regular fixtures for me.
Yeah, so obviously that's show season here is basically June, July, August.
Yeah.
Few in September and I guess finish October, but certainly locally, let's say Gillingham and Shaftesbury now in August. You've got Honiton is August, and there's others around. But yeah, so Andrew, I worked with you, I would say,
8 years ago, yeah.
So yeah, it's when I first met you. You're an agronomist by trade, but obviously that's not what we're here to talk about today. But I know you're an Aussie. Others may have picked up on that, they may not have, but where are you from and what's your background over there?
So I'm from a little town in southwest New South Wales called Cootamundra, which no one's really ever heard of unless they're a cricket fan. It's the birthplace of Donald Bradman, so that's its claim to fame.
Definitely got a claim to fame there.
And if you've ever been to Cootamundra, by God, don't we dine out on it. It's
take the whole of Australia dines out on Bradman, don't they? I remember my time there, it was Don Bradman.
There's Bradman Hotel, Bradman Street, just about everything else is there, yeah. It's halfway between Sydney and Sydney and Melbourne, but 300 miles inland. It's in what they call the sheep wheat zone, so it's good for extensive grazing. Can't really finish cattle, but lots of people have them, and winter cereal-based rotations largely. And the reason that is we get lots of cold, wet winters. I'm from one of the coldest parts of the country. We have cold, wet winters, but very hot, dry summers. So it burns up through the summer, and therefore, you can't really finish cattle, but fine for extensive sheep grazing.
So you offer property there originally? Or?
No, it's a small enough town that I was heavily involved with agriculture growing up. That's how I had my interest in farming.
To be honest, a lot of Oz is, isn't it? They're not, in my time over there, people aren't so far removed from agriculture. If they are, it's only a generation, whereas here it's multiple generations.
It is the biggest industry in the town. It's the primary industry, and agriculture supports the town. Yeah. That was how I became interested in it. Then I went and studied agronomy at Sydney Uni for 4 years, and then worked as an agricultural consultant out near Orange, New South Wales, between Orange and Dubbo, a small town called Wellington. Yeah. And then worked there 4 or 5 years.
Who's that for?
Ivy ATP they were going at the time. It's Richard Ivy Consulting now, and they did everything from farm budgeting, farm management. We did a lot of economic loss, so going through after bushfires and working out what the damage to the farm was. That led into more insurance work.
That would be effectively doing the loss adjusting.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's right. That's exactly it. And then because the company that I worked for also had an accountancy firm attached to it, they did a lot of expert witnessing for all sorts of medical negligence sort of things that would go through the accountancy side of the company, which when it was quiet, because I like statistics and like arguing, I would sometimes do the background research for them and draft it up, and then the accountants would go and finish the job and go and take it to the courts. So,
take the credit for it, probably.
Yeah, take the credit for it, absolutely, yeah. And then, I came over here 17 years ago now. Came over for a year off and didn't leave. And my first sort of professional foray back into agriculture over here was working with the Dorset Agricultural Advisory Service, which was a grant-funded service under, I guess, Tier 2 funding it was at the time. Yeah. And they provided free on-farm advice for any government initiative. So there was when the single farm payment changed from the old IAC system. Yep. They just changed all the countryside stewardship to what did they call it at the time, to entry-level stewardship, all that sort of thing. There was a lot of confusion, so they set this up.
And all sorts, probably.
Yeah, so they set that up. That was grant-funded. part-time, and it was a job share arrangement with the Royal Bath and West of England Society.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that's sort of how that led me to the commentary work.
I was going to say, how did that, that was not obviously what you were doing for them, but I guess you just volunteered or stepped up? Or
Like most of my adventures in life, didn't say no at the right time. And, So, well, actually, it was my first boss who I was working with in Australia, used to take on projects all the time, and his mantra was say yes, then work out how you're going to do it later. And he's still going. It hasn't come back to bite him yet, but that's really what happened with me. We can come back to that if we'd like in a second. But so just to finish the agronomy journey, from the Royal Bath and West and Dorset Agricultural Advisory Service, I went to work with PS as an agronomist, which is what I studied and trained for in Australia. Worked with them for must have been 7 years or so, and then went and joined the dark side of working for BASF, which they're a chemical manufacturer. They're one of the world's biggest chemical manufacturers. There's a stat that you're never more than 6 feet away from something that's coming out of one of their factories.
Yeah, because exactly, it's not just agricultural, is it? I mean, they're everything.
They do.
Yeah. Videotapes, all sorts. Remember
cassettes. Everyone remembers the cassettes. Yeah. They sold that business just when those little silver shiny discs came out. But everyone still remembers that we used to make cassettes. And then so I'm in the crop protection side.
I was going to say, so just briefly, what do you actually do for them now?
So I'm in the crop protection side. I look after Dorset, Wilts, Hampshire, Surrey, Sussex. My job is sort of to be almost the face of the company, to grow as an agronomist in the area. So provide them technical advice on how to use the products. Yeah. Get involved with a bit of PR and marketing locally.
You're effectively going to your former employer with the latest chemical, the latest updates, and then probably on farm with some of it as well. Yeah,
that's right. So they are one of my contacts that I go in and brief them each year. You'll remember that the agronomists would go and have spring and autumn briefings. Yeah. So I'll come in and talk to them about the portfolio of products they have to use, make sure they're up to speed on all the technical side of it and know how to use it. Yeah.
So and I guess whatever you expect to come, rust or whatever, you probably we're expecting this or whatever, and
that's right. Yeah.
So that's what you do, which is great. So then take a step back. We're obviously here to talk about your showring antics. Is that a good way to describe it? I don't know. That's a bit unfair because I can't think of any off the top of my head to about you.
Yeah, it was strange. So growing up as a child, we used to get quite a lot of BBC feed on the ABC in Australia. So I used to see a lot of the equine events that were on, and always heard Mike Tucker's voice.
The
show jumping, horse of the year, that sort of thing. That's it, Olympia, and the Olympics, and there was a lot of shared feeds with the commentary teams. So I was used to growing up as a child, amazed by Mike Tucker's voice. And my first time at the Royal Bath and West main show, he's doing the cattle, and I was like, I know that voice. Where do I know that from? And then someone said, that's Mike. I was like, okay. And at that show, the Dorset Agricultural Advisory Service used to have a stand across from the cattle ring, so I'd sit there and watch it all day. And it must have been my second show I was there, I think. Someone saw me on the Wednesday and said, the commentator for the Saturday for the sheep has pulled out. Yeah. Do you want to do it? So they're rare breed sheep. No one knows anything about these things. You'll be fine. And I went, that sounds like a bit of a laugh. We'll do that. So I spent the next 2-3 days at the Dorset Agricultural Advisory Service stand with a heap of sheep notes, reading up, and then watching what Mike was doing and how he was running his classes. He was the best in the business, and just sort of watched a bit of the patter and worked out how he was doing it, and arrived on the Saturday, and it was all fine. That was, that was where they had the sheep at that stage, and the rare breed sheep. It didn't naturally hold a big crowd, so it was fine. People would come and stay and watch.
Crowd, is it?
And then then they'd disappear. And then the following year, they asked me back to do the rare breed cattle on the Saturday with Mike. And they were looking for someone to take on all.
Effectively take over from him.
Not so much take over, but work alongside him, because it's quite a hard task for one person to do it. And so then they asked me back the following year for all 3 days, at which stage I went, I better do a bit more research into these cattle breeds. And then went from there. And I must have worked with Mike for about 10 years, I think, before he passed away. And it was the best apprenticeship you could have. He was absolutely brilliant. He taught me so much. Very little of it was actually about commentary. It's about how to get a story out of someone. Just watching, I was quite happy to be quiet and just play second fiddle and pitch in when needed. but quite a lot of it is sort of judging the mood in the ring, judging the crowd. So at 9 o'clock in the morning when there's no one there's no need to whip everybody up into a mad frenzy. Whereas at lunchtime crowd, and that's the only thing on, and they're 4 deep at actually, let's make a show of this and really, really make a show of it. The real the sort of skill comes from sidling up to someone and, 30 seconds, go, okay, tell me about the animal, tell me about you, and just getting a little bit of a story in it, knowing it's there. So if they win something or win a championship, you can bring that out then. Yes. And it's really interesting. I bought in, I don't know, this is not something that works on an audio format, but I've bought in from this year's Bath and West show my catalogue that I use. I'd never leave it when I've got it.
I was going to ask you, so you know you're doing it, obviously you know who the entries are. Where do you go from there in terms of your prep work? So
I've also bought in a fairly sizable manual. I'll let you two describe what you see in front of you there.
A4, probably inch thick.
Yeah. The last page tells me it's 55 pages long.
With lots of supplementary notes shoved in there as well, I should say.
And what that is that's actually all the notes that I've written or found over the last 12 years, whatever I've been doing it. And all the different breeds, which I put together from when I was making notes to start with, type them up and or read through them. And so every now and then someone will give you a commentator's list of things the breed or might like you to say. Sort of store that away. That comes from the society, and you can see now it hasn't been updated for a few years, but I will go through when it's quiet and update it, and it's quite useful. A lot of it now is committed to memory, but in the early days it wasn't, and I had to refer to it or just a few days beforehand just to freshen things up. But every now and then you'll find a breed comes in that I don't know anything about, and you're like, oh right, let's go back through that and find out what it's. So the Irish Moilds, I was like,
what's that?
I probably spoke about those 10 years ago and I've forgotten everything about them, but it's in that. So if something comes before me at a show, I'll look through, I'll get the catalogue. I ask for the draft catalogue as soon as I can, and that normally comes through via email 3-4 days beforehand. You have to use it with caution because it will change. They go to print literally 24 hours before the show.
Oh, okay, it is that.
Yeah, and then even then the copy that I pick up from the office will have red pen through it for changes, so it's a pretty live thing, but it does give you a bit of background into what's there. So if I'm looking at the page now, it's any other native breeds, and they put beside them in brackets what it is. So most of those, there was nothing that was a surprise there. But
I'm going to ask you a question going backwards. Obviously, you were saying you're from a sheep and wheat area. What drove the interest in cattle, or was it simply you said you started with the sheep and just the opportunity came and you went with it?
Yeah, it sounded like a fun thing to do, and I thought I'll have a crack at that. Yeah.
It's not like there was a burning interest in cattle per se.
No, though it's fair to say I've always had more than a passing interest in public speaking. I've done a lot of public speaking in my personal life over the years, and as a child growing up at school, I was sort of the guy from the year that they turned to whenever somebody had to make a public address for on behalf of the year.
You were happy to stand up and say thank you or whatever.
That's it. Yeah. I did a lot of amateur dramatics in Australia. I quite like performing.
On Neighbours?
I wasn't on Neighbours. Yeah. So
I've missed your opportunity now, haven't you?
That's it. It's too late now. The accent's changed too much. So I'm quite happy to do that and to perform, and so I thought this will be a crack, it'll be a bit of a laugh, I'll do it. I didn't expect it to sort of move on. Going. And actually with the day job that I do now, actually there's quite a lot of presenting that I'm doing. I have to do a stand up in front of people and talk and present all the time, so it's always...
It all helps, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I'm comfortable in that environment. I thought we'll do that. And actually, to be honest, I didn't know a lot about cattle when I first started. Hence all the research that I did. Yep. You do have to do quite a lot of research for any sort of commentary work you do. So it sort of started as at the Bath and West, and I did that for a few years and started to really enjoy it, and said to Alan Lyons, who was running the show at the time, said, look, I quite like this. How do I do more? He's like, write to the societies and
whether getting in Shaftesbury or
wherever. And I haven't actually done that. Off the back of that conversation, I picked up 3 shows, I think. So someone came to see Alan and said, we don't have a commentator. Do you know anyone that can do the job? He's like, here's Clooney's number. Give him a call. He'll be all right. And sort of endorsed me. And I picked up 3 shows, and then people find out you do a bit more of it. So I ended up doing like a Mottcombe Village Fete.
Oh, did you?
The girl in the band that was performing heard me, and she runs another carnival, and she's like, "Can you come and do it?" On the weekend, I had a day and a half of doing the North Dorset Sevens Festival, which is a massive festival. You know, 60 teams, 3,000 people through the gate, and they need somebody to do the public announcing so it all runs to order. And you just sort of pick these things up as time goes by, and
So what shows do you do now?
North Somerset, Gillingham and Shaftesbury, Royal Bath and West. I do the Dairy Show. I'm doing Ulsford Show, and then I'm not doing them this year, but I have done Romsey Show in the past. Yeah. The Royal County of Berkshire Show, but that's not happening this year.
So you must have been quiet the last couple of years with COVID.
It was very quiet. It took me a little bit to get into the stride of things at the Bath and West this year, just sort of trying to find your stride. It's the first. I did Gillingham and Shaftesbury last year, but it's a little bit more relaxed. And also the way that it runs there, I am the only commentator at that. So it becomes a little bit more of a announcement service as opposed to a truly commentary kind of engaging until you get to the championships or to the interbreeds, where you've got time to. Because what's great to do at an interbreed championship, a lot of the commentary we're doing is to inform the public. Some of them might not know what the breed is. Some of them might not know the difference between a cow and a bull, to be honest, or between a beef animal and a dairy animal.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's quite nice to be able to be informative. And I noticed when I do, over the years of doing the commentary, people will happily stay and watch A class. They might not watch two, but they'll stay and watch one. If it's interbreed champion, you've got all these different breeds coming in. So I can talk about what the breed is, how it fits into the farming environment, because some are,
It's Jersey Holstein or Hereford, Murray Grey, Angus, or whatever.
Yeah, and they all sit in a different place in the agricultural setting. Some are better for extensive grazing, some do well in intensive finishing units. Some are used, so like the British Blue is used almost exclusively as a dairy cross to add value to the beef calves that come off the dairy. But the general public don't know this, so you can try and explain that to them, and then at the end of it you've got generally 10, 12 breeds all lined up. They are the ones that have won their breed class, so they're special animals. They look really good. They are very good animals. Sometimes we've got some extremely good livestock handlers in there as well, and you can sort of tell the story, and then you can build a bit of suspense about it, like which way is the judge going to go and all that sort of stuff. And then they have the big tap out, and you put all the emphasis into it, and you can really build that up, and that's great fun, really good fun, and you can tell from the applause that you get that people are buying into it. The Colonel Bill Roberts trophy that they do at the Royal Bath and West is the beef one in particular, because they've just got more breeds, is one of the best that you see. There's sort of anywhere between 12 to 15 breeds. They have 4 animals that have been chosen by the judge in consultation with the society. So you've got 60 head of cattle in there, 60 of the best young livestock handlers, or old in some cases as well, livestock handlers in the southwest. And if you build it up the right way, you just sort of say as much on the microphone and just go quiet at the end, and you just hear a natural round of applause come in without asking. People realise it's pretty impressive to see 60 head of seriously good cattle with seriously good livestock handlers, and a judge standing at the back looking absolutely bewildered about how he can find the best out of it.
I mean, let's be honest, the Bath and West now, that really is the only sort of agricultural bit that's still there, isn't it?
So they have really good equine entries. They do have good livestock. There is,
but I personally would call it a country show now rather than an agricultural show, because I certainly remember, say, 35 years ago, you still had machinery stands.
Yeah.
You had a proper agricultural show, as well as everything else, whereas now you only really hear about it as the livestock, and there's a lot of farmers I know don't worry with the Bath and West because it's not an agricultural show.
It's fair to say that there's more hot tubs and outdoor sofas and things there coming in, but they pay the bills and keep the society going, that allows the rest of it to go.
I guess on the flip side of that, though, now you've got the dairy show, haven't you? I mean, that started.
So the specialist shows and machinery shows now are a bigger thing than they used to be. The llamas and those sort of shows, which are more accessible than they used to be.
I mean, I remember the dairy show starting at the Bath and West, and that's got to be probably 30 years ago, I suspect now. And, you know, as you say, it's a specialist show, and, you know, having been on both sides when you're on trade, you know you're talking to the right people as well. Usually it's not Joe Public who's come to get his free plastic bag or
it's an absolute brilliant show. It's one of the best industry shows in the country. It is wall-to-wall business. There are cattle there. It's a smaller part of the show compared to other shows, but it's one of the most prestigious shows to win with the interbreed. But the business gets done is amazing. When you walk out into those, what's the pig pavilion at the main show, and it's just a buzz. It sounds like there's a swarm of bees there, and it's just this background buzz, which is everybody having really brilliant conversations. Both, you know, the dairy farmers that are going to it and the trade stands that are there. It's an absolute brilliant show.
You're talking about dairy show. I mean, I've been there from 8:30, 9 in the morning when it starts till 6 o'clock at night. And you just don't stop. And whether it's seeing customers, whether it's seeing suppliers, whether it's seeing just people, you can be just on your feet all day, and you just bang, bang, bang. You just talk from one to the other. It's great. It's great to do that. It's
absolutely brilliant. It gets bigger and bigger each year as well. Yeah. It's that when that guy comes onto the stand at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when you're breaking down, and you're like, don't really want to have to talk to them right now.
It's completely gone.
I mean, so you don't do anything else with the Bath and West other than the commentating these days?
No.
I was listening to you speaking about commentating, and one of the most positive things about that is when that judge is finally going to make that final decision. And what you're so right about when you're commentating, if you actually pull in everybody, especially people that are maybe not used to agriculture, and see our absolute passion for our animals, and you can actually get that alive in them and actually get people to look and start clapping. I've just been to one in Germany that was unbelievable. The amount of energy that is starting to come through with when those guys are lining up and getting ready. I've been in the showring, I've judged before as well, and it's hugely intimidating. But you guys actually help us. It's the way that you're talking, and you're talking up the crowd and everything. It just makes it worthwhile.
I remember I've been in the stalls in Milan, the show. I think it was the calf show even. So it was not that, but just as you say, intimidating. Yeah. This particular judge was not going down very well with his decisions, and the comments, the comments that were being heard as you walked around the stalls, and you're just like, come on, guys! It's one person's opinion on the day. I mean, I was never particularly I wasn't into showing cows. Didn't do anything for me, because to me it was one person's opinion on the day. It's what mattered was what she did day in, day out. And I say that having bred one of the most famous Australian show cows ever. But people kept telling me I should show her before she calved, 2-year-old. But like you were saying about the general public, we're saying, okay, we're aiming this for people primarily dairy in the southwest. Yeah. But given the listeners we've already seen, if non-dairy, non-agricultural people listen to this and it gives them an insight to the passion that there is within this industry. Yes, some people, it is just 4 legs, 4 tits, it's a cow, it produces milk, that's it. But for other people, I know I was definitely one of those people, they were family. They were my ex-wife referred to the Noni, the Rudolph, as my first wife. And let's be honest, she was my first wife, really. I had a longer relationship with her than I did my ex-wife. But, the passion there is for people that show their cows, particularly, there is a passion for those cattle. Well, I say cattle, but sheep, whatever.
Yeah, there is. I do often try and encourage them when. So at the sort of end of showing, they'll open up the cattle lines for people to walk through. And I do try and encourage people through it, because everyone is so passionate about what they do. They're very proud of what they do. And in this day and age, actually, they're spending quite a lot of money to get them there. And it's nice for them to walk through. And people will stop and talk about their livestock for a long time. One of the
we need the general public to see that, though, as well, don't we?
We do.
We
absolutely.
As an industry, show ourselves off better sometimes too.
We need to connect the food and where it comes from. We really do. And so you're talking to an Australian here, and he's passionate about Australia, and the England-Australian rivalry is never far from the surface for me. And I happily fly the flag for just how good British farming is. I really do. And it's some of the best in the world, and it's some of the safest in the world, and we need to really embrace that and push it. We really should be. And unfortunately, quite often, political decisions come in, and that's not always at the forefront. And if people realise just the expense it takes to grow food in this country, it's far too cheap. It really is. So the best we can do is try and support people. I am very, very passionate about that we need to connect food and farming. And if I can do it a little way from the ring, it's great. I had a really interesting one a few years ago, actually, at the Bath and West. This must have been 10 years ago, I think, when Raymond Blanc used to have his TV show called The Restaurant, and he just bought the manor. I'm not going to do the French accent. The manor up in near Bicester, and he was at the Bath and West as a bit of a VIP, and I get this call, can I come to the members and council sort of thing? So I go over there at lunch, and Raymond Blanc was there, and he wanted to know what sort of cattle he should stock his farm with. He's got a few acres that are on the back of the manor. So I'm like, okay. And so next minute, I'm walking through the cattle lines with Raymond Blanc, introducing him to all these breeders. He's turning to me for thoughts on each breed and which one he should have.
This is Hereford, this is Angus.
And I was giving the pros and cons of the breeds and that sort of thing. And everyone's really enjoying talking to him. He's very passionate about food as well. So there's a Frenchman really passionate about British farming. Yeah. And if a Frenchman's passionate about Britain, you should you should pay attention to it, really, shouldn't you? And so at the end he's like, so Andrew, what breed should I have? And I was like, oh, this is a lot of pressure. And I was like, actually, Raymond, you should have the Limousin. It's like I explained to him the butchering side of the Limousin, why it's a very good beef breed for him to have, but also it's a French breed. You're a Frenchman. French, yeah. This is a great story that your customers can dine out on for you. And I actually drove past the property a few weeks ago, but I couldn't look over the fence. It's all walled, so I couldn't quite see what he actually decided to go for in the end.
Be interesting to find out.
Yeah, and then I got home that evening, put on TV in the restaurants there, and sort of went, hang on a second, this is very
Raymond,
strange.
If you do happen to be listening, please let us know.
Let us know,
what breed, and we'll quite happily pass that on to Andrew. It's no worries at all. But I mean, over the years, there must be some stories to tell from the show ring in terms of, I think you mentioned earlier about, is it the North Somerset show is sort of the starting one, and I suspect people are finding their feet. I suspect there's a few things people have forgotten or...
So I did the main ring at the North Somerset show, and it's the first show of the year, so I'm not involved with the cattle there or the sheep. It's the first show of the year, and it's quite often when people will bring out animals that have just been halter broken. They'll just be trying to work out whether they're worth showing or whether they're capable of showing, because it's worth reminding people, these aren't pets. These are 600-700 kilos of pure beef, and if they get loose, they get loose. They're friendly to an extent, but if they don't want to do something, they're not doing it.
I used to have a big Holstein cow, Gibson Noni, and she was a proper 64-65 inch cow. And if you, just for example, tried to put her in a crush, now, as I've said before and previously, I'm 6'6", I'm not a small bloke. And I used to just be able, any cow, put my back behind her, push it in the crush. If they didn't want to go in, job done. No. She was big, and she'd plant all 4 feet to the ground. I'm not going anywhere. However, who we brought her from had halter trained her. Put a halter on her, she would follow you around like a puppy dog, and you'd lead her through the crush, lock her in the crush, you'd be fine. Try and get her in there any other way. Not a hope in hell.
Yeah, when they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. That North Somerset show, I don't think I've done a grand parade yet where something hasn't got loose. So they bring all the cattle into the grand parade, and the sheep and the goats and the alpacas and the llamas. Now there's a big difference between alpacas and llamas. I can never really work out what it is. I certainly can't work out what it is from 100 yards away. I suspect there's an extra 0 on the end of the value, which is what's really telling. But when someone's walking into the main ring, and I've been given no notes, but they're walking behind a sign that says alpaca, and I call it an alpaca, I turn around and get that abuse you talk about when someone gets it wrong as a commentator. It's a bloody llama, and you think, oh, hang on, it said alpaca. It's a pretty fair assumption. Looks like one, it's there. You get that quite regularly. quite often after Stockman's dinner which is the night before the last day, there's always a few weary heads the next morning, and there's a few tales that will come out of that. And you have to be a bit careful, so you need to be able to treat them with respect. And the more you do that, and people see how you can stitch somebody up without anyone really knowing, other than the people involved, that they'll tell you more. So it was a few years back, some of the young farmers, they left all the show jumps up on the main ring, and it was all lit. And some of the young farmers decided they'd do a run around and jump over the fences at night.
Did they bring their hobby horses with them?
They didn't, but apparently there's a few other bits and pieces they forgot to take with them, including clothes. So I was told this, and I just sort of stored it. And that's the thing, as a commentator, you can't use everything you're given, but you store it until you can. And lo and behold, the guy who did run around naked that evening, or the evening before, he actually won the interbreed at the time. And so the way I just sort of pitched it so that nobody but the cattle people would know it, and that wasn't stitching up, was that he was also one of the Southwest's greatest show jumpers, and had a clear round the night before. So just trying to do things like that. The Berkshire show, they take the prize-winning pig at the Grand Parade, comes out, and they actually let it out into the main ring, and
as in
let it go. And
right.
Just waiting for that to run properly one day, because it'll be a pain in the derriere, but it'll be hellishly funny to watch. So, and there's been a few commentators stitched up over the years. They haven't stitched me up too badly, but Mike was stitched up one year by, they brought in some cattle with a breed board that the girl guides were carrying at the front that wasn't a breed.
Yeah.
And
he was trying to pronounce it or whatever it was.
Yeah, but everyone fell about, because he managed to find 2 or 3 facts about this breed that nobody was aware of, and talk about it. Yeah, so there's quite a lot of those that sort of hijinks that quite often goes on, and part of it's also I think you need to take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. I will more than once throughout the season quickly call something from a distance, get it wrong. That's fine. You correct yourself. You don't have to feel embarrassed about that. You explain what's happened. Yeah. Expect that the guys that are on the non-public side, that I spend a lot of time with at ringside, the livestock handlers, judges and stewards, they're going to take the mickey out of me, and that's fine. We can have a laugh about that, especially when you call a cow a bull or something like that, because you can't see the back end properly, and you make that mistake. Yes. From a distance, it's all a bit of fun. They tease you and laugh. That's fine. I don't mind that. Or when someone who's been showing South Devon's their entire life decides to start showing limousins, and you sit there going, why have you done that? I can't tell what you've got. This is confusing. You plumb for one of them and you get it wrong, and they take the mickey out of you again. So it's fun like that. I do feel sorry for the exhibitors, because quite a lot of the patter that comes out is for the general public. Yeah. And as we've said, they'll watch one class, but they won't watch 2. So there's an element of repetition that comes out. And if these guys are at a 4-day show, they will hear me say the same thing on a number of occasions.
Yeah, I mean, again, the agriculture shows, they are a big part of agricultural culture, really, aren't they? I mean, you're making me think, again, Malanda show, when I was up in North Queensland, I think I see it's now 2 days. It used to just be a day, I seem to think. Maybe I'm wrong. But just the interaction and the way people watch the ring. Certain people watch different ways, or just the chatter going on in the stalls behind. Or the classic story I remember is I knew a vet up there who'd won champion cow with his Guernsey, or won Guernsey champion cow, and it was the local CMEX rep, well-known guy. They were at the bar that night. He was obviously celebrating, and he said, "So what should I make this cow to?" And apparently I wasn't there, but the story goes, he said, "I know, I've got the perfect bull for that cow. It will do everything right." Apparently had the whole bar was just, leaning in closer and closer, getting more and more intense. Well, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? Who's it going to be? Who's this Guernsey bull that's just going to knock everything out? And when he finally told him it was a Simmental bull, that's how much he thought of the Guernsey sort of thing. Yeah. It's just part of the whole. I guess it's the days away from the farm, isn't it? It's the fun.
It is. There's a lot of camaraderie with it. Long days, short nights, and they really get along, and there's, like I said, the camaraderie that they go with. I've always, for me, the first of the actual cattle work started at the Bath and West and then finished at the Royal Berkshire, which was in September. The October dairy show was a bit of a different show to that, but was that show in September was the end of the sort of summer shows. And they're always felt like on the last night of the show, end of school, end of term type of vibe to it. There was everyone was starting to get a little bit kind of slap happy, and
some people get competitive, don't you, in terms of different shows. As you say, you try, is that animal going to win? How's she going to go? And if swap it round, or some animals you just know that season are going to be incredibly hard to beat. Yeah.
It is, and that's the nice thing following it through. You can see, if you know that it's won the whole year and you're doing the last show of the summer, you make people feel special about what they're doing, and that's where the balance comes in with the commentary, is to make people feel special, find the good local story that people can relate to, and again, I'm sort of going around in circles here. I couldn't find it, but I had my first ever catalogue I had from when I commentated on that rare breed day. I can't find it at the moment, but there's nothing in it. I might have written one or two next to it, and I was absolutely useless at it. And then I say Mike taught me a lot about commentary, so I'll just turn that around so you can see it. You can see this is the livestock catalogue from the Bath and West show this year. It's covered in writing. It's different colour pens, different colour highlighters. So the black stuff's general things to store away. The red's the story that might come out in the Grand Parade. I highlight the livestock that have won things in different colours, so when I'm flicking through, I can quickly grab what they are. And that's actually, I was pleased to see there were some commentary notes that were published for F1 recently, and also for rugby, that actually it's not dissimilar to what those boys are doing. And when it's really strange, once you start doing a bit of commentary work, it destroys listening to cricket and to rugby a lot, because I know the tricks and the cheats that they're doing. And so, like, someone will tell you, say it's someone's birthday in the livestock ring, I could just go and say, and it's a happy birthday to so-and-so. That's fine, they feel special. What's really nice is if you can sit on that, and then if they win their class, or and what a way to celebrate their birthday. That's a much nicer way to tell that story. But I listen to the rugby, and you'll hear them go, and this is his 17th test. Of course, he debuted on this day, which was his 21st birthday, and they'll tell the story, but they're just reading off the list. They're not looking for that. They're trying to get that little snippet in when they can, rather than perhaps sitting on it for when it's really important. And you'll hear it quite a lot.
It's like a lot of these things, isn't it? Once you know the tricks, it's just not the same. It's just not the same, because you know what goes into it. There isn't the magic then about it, because you understand the other side of what's going on.
I do get also a bit jealous of it too when I hear it, because I had a few of the shows where I'm lucky enough to sit in the box, especially when Mike was around, and watch Mike work with Nicholas Brooks Ward. And him and Brooks Ward were amazing when they talk and commentate, one on the live mic, one off. And the amount of banter they were giving each other off mic, and this lovely gold voice from both of them just coming out across. Nobody would know the amount of grief they were putting up within the commentary box. How they did it, I'll never know. It was just brilliant. And then you listen to TMS and Agger's winding up Jeffrey Boycott, and I know from just the little bit of insight I've seen, what's going on in the background and how much fun they're having with it all, and the poor three guys that are on the live mic having to behave themselves. And
I was going to say, I just remember, what's his name? He's passed away now. Is it Henry
Blofeld? Blowers? No.
So on Test Match Special sometimes he would just burst, trying to control himself and what he was trying to say, and
It's a skill that those boys have. And occasionally they corpse and break it all, but
occasionally it comes up and they forget the marks.
That's I haven't fallen foul of that. I'm very, very aware of it. There's been a few instances where it's I tend to have it. I mute it, and then if I use my radio mic, and if I'm talking to someone, I will have it quite often behind my back as well, just to make sure.
I always used to remember doing that. You sort of almost want to hide it in case something happens.
Just in case.
Or just be very, very quiet. And another thing, have you, obviously you watch this judging all the time.
Yeah.
Do you pre-guess sometimes?
Oh, I do play a bit of a game with myself. I'll never be brave enough to say it. I'm okay on the bigger classes.
Yeah.
And I'm more so on the beef than the dairy. I've got a better eye for it in beef than dairy. But yeah, by no means do I always agree with the judge, or perhaps I should say, am I right?
Yeah.
It's quite a nice feeling when you see it.
Sometimes it is the judge. I mean, again, I'm just thinking back to my undercard days. A judge came up that particular day, and you'd remember the bull, Neil. He liked his Gibsons,
Right.
and you didn't even have to
look.
look.
You'd also like Gibson. They were really nice and strong.
They were strong, they were short,
Strong,
slightly short in the
deep-bodied.
neck. Yeah, bang, bang. And you didn't even have to look in the catalogue. You could go 1, 2, 3. Gibson. You knew.
Right. Okay.
He just liked his Gibsons, and he did breed a very good Gibson, I remember. But I think that one is it Ecker, the Queensland, the down Brisbane.
Right.
But he just banged them out, and if it was a Gibson, it was you could guarantee that it had a place.
Yeah.
And nothing else even got a look in that day. And it just different judges have different.
They do. I don't ever think someone's ever got it wrong.
No, it's one person's opinion on the day, isn't it?
And it's something that you were talking about people coming in from the comments going around the ring. You'll always get somebody that grabs hold of you and tries to complain. Actually, one of the things, it's strange as a commentator because you're heavily involved with the show, but you're not. You're there to say what you see, to call the class, and to do what the stewards and the judges ask you to do. You don't get involved with managing the show. You don't make decisions, and you shouldn't. You just do as you're asked.
You're literally just
and
making comment on what's going on.
And you quite often just want to go, look, it's nothing to do with me. I'm just talking about what I've seen.
Yeah.
Go and speak to the stewards. I try and be polite to them, but let them vent at me rather than at someone who actually has a say in what might go on. But it's nothing to do with me. It's not my call. But rarely have I ever thought, oh, they've got that one wrong. They know what they're doing. I find that I like doing the groups. I've got a better eye for it in the groups, but that's slightly different. And so when we do the Colonel Bill Roberts, they parade around in front of the commentary box, and just because of the volume of cattle that are there, and I've got the notes from it here that you can see. So it's one of the few, because the judge that does this has generally judged a lot of the cattle, the interbreed championships earlier. It's the only. I will ask the judge out of courtesy, but it's one of the few events where I will break from etiquette and actually talk about the individual animals and the handlers that are in there. It goes on for 30 minutes. You've got to keep some momentum going. And I will ask the judge if I can do it, and they're always quite happy. But normally you wouldn't mention an animal whilst it's being judged.
Very, very fair enough.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is you've actually got to keep people entertained.
Yeah.
If the judging's going on for too long, you actually need to keep the interest. Yeah.
You've got to keep it going. So
to be honest with group 3, if you just go, well, here's a group of 3, it's not really a lot to say, is it? You do have to. I can understand why you want to talk about the 3 animals that are making up that 3.
And so I'll sit in the box quite often with that, because you need to be a little bit organised when I talk about who the actual people are with them. I'll talk about that because there's 4 of them. Choose up a bit of time, and then I'll say, right, I'll go back into the ring now, because when the commentator's in the ring, I don't want to use the word ringmaster, that's the wrong word, but you are a little bit of a centre of attention as well, quite often. And so you can start building it up then. But I always turn the mic off just before I walk out, and I'll tell the ladies that are sitting up doing all the results, it'll go with the Charolais, or it'll go with that. And quite like being able to walk back in and go, told you.
And if you walk back in, then it didn't happen. Well, judge made a mistake today.
Yeah, that's right.
No. So, Andrew, I mean, really sort of wrapping up a little bit, is there any, I don't know, words of wisdom maybe for anybody thinking about showing that you'd like to sort of suggest?
If you're thinking about showing, get involved, especially any young children that are thinking of doing it. You will always find an exhibitor that is happy to lend you some young stock to go out and to train you up. And the young livestock handling competitions in the southwest, at each show, there's some seriously good young handlers that have come through. So if you've got a youngster that wants to get involved, go to your local show, speak to someone there who's showing, and maybe you won't find them for that show, but maybe the next one they go to, they're more than happy to do it.
So start talking to them and
there's and if you're interested in sort of getting involved with showing cattle of your own, you don't need to have huge acres. You don't need to have lots of ground. And unfortunately, his name eludes me. There's a young guy over at Taunton who has got himself a nice little herd, and he has it. The dairy cattle, and he just has stock everywhere on 1 acre here, 1 acre there. Quite often he's not paying for it. Sometimes it's just rough grazing. But mainly young stock, but he's built up a herd to a point that he can now, enough to go showing and enough to warrant sort of investing money and finding some land. But he's built that up over, I remember talking to him, his grandmother had a tennis court that was overgrown, but that was enough to start. And you can do it if you want to. There's lots of people out there that'll help you get a start in it, especially from the livestock handling side of things. It's really good fun for people to get involved with. Sheep are probably a bit easier for people without any experience because they're not as, they're dafter, but they're
more easy to handle.
They're only
physical. You tip a sheep a lot easier than you can tip a cow.
That's it. If you've got 100 kilos versus 400 kilos, it's a bit easier, isn't it? So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But otherwise, anything from yourself?
No, that was absolutely brilliant. Thanks very much.
No problems at all.
So,
enjoyed it.
As per usual, we're on Twitter, so just follow us at ChewintheCud Pod, or if you've got any questions, even we're happy to pass them on to Andrew from this, especially say Raymond, if you want to let us know what beef breed you went for. We're always welcome to hear from you. And you're welcome to come on here if you want to as well. But email us at podcast@chewinthecud.com. Yeah. But otherwise, I'd like to thank Andrew for his time and for coming to speak to us. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you to Neil, and thank you to us, our listeners. So thank you, Andrew.
No problems at all. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you very much, everybody.
And
cheers.
Keep showing.
Exactly. Goodbye.
Keep showing.
We'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose, and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses or products during this podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of Chewing the Cud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of Chewing the Cud Limited, and the views of Neil Greggor are personal and may not be the views of Master Gen Limited and any affiliated companies. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.